I noticed technology while kayaking,
I learned engineering while snow tubing.
hiking,
Snowmobiling.
Mushroom foraging.
horseback riding.
We see a lot of STEM in outdoor recreation. We see a lot of outdoor recreation professionals using STEM. The question of this project is, can outdoor recreation be a context for young people to learn STEM?
The outdoors context of this project is really important because oftentimes the outdoors is a free choice learning experience where youth are either already participating in outdoor activities or perhaps outdoors feels full of less pressure. It's a place where people feel free or where they can escape to, or perhaps they just see learning in a different way.
What's unique about the outdoor recreation project is, first of all, we used a mobile app that allowed youth to demonstrate their competencies, to select videos or enter texts about answers to challenges that the project gave them. The other thing that's unique about it is it was an out of school project. So even though they checked in with their teachers, they were using this mobile app to find evidence of STEM in their outdoor recreation activities that they chose: hiking, snowmobiling, fishing.
In our culminating event, I was really moved when I read some of the reflections because the words that kept coming up were accomplished, proud, engaged, excited. I felt smart, right? And I want to see more of that because I want more kids to experience I'm proud of myself. I feel hopeful. I'm excited, right? That's the kind of learning I want to see in all communities, but especially rural communities.
I didn't really think about a whole lot about STEM like before the project, but now it's kind of opened up my eyes to see how much like STEM is in like everything you do in life out, like especially in the outdoors, like just with skiing, hiking, with everything. So yeah.
Doing this project and just being more comfortable, like seeing STEM in different ways. I just like learned that math and science don't have to be scary things. And so like I enjoyed it more in school and stuff like that. So it just broadened my horizons.
During this project, there's a lot of us that were co-researchers, which was kind of cool because we're only in middle and high school. But it really gave me a chance to explore something that I'm passionate about while also having fun, just doing fun stuff with my friends and just being outside.
Adults often don't see the STEM that kids inherently know, the STEM knowledge that kids inherently have inside them. And so I think through this project, we were able to make that STEM evident and really honor the learning that the kids have been able to do and really bring that to the surface. And I'm excited for adults to see how engaged and how intelligent and how passionate rural kids are about STEM concepts when they're introduced in new ways.
Yeah, so that's the project, and you have access to this video. I would welcome you to share it, with anyone that's in your community that seems appropriate. But we're going to dive into the details of the project. But I hope that from this video, you can see that we really positioned youth as those co-researchers. So let's just set the stage for 1 second. The outdoors and STEM in rural communities. I just want to create some kind of like collective understanding. So when we thought about why the outdoors, almost any environment can support informal science learning, right? But what we wanted to do was anchor STEM in a learning environment that's authentic and relevant already for rural learners, right? Rural learners, and what we found is rural learners already have a strong, positive connection to outdoor recreation. So the data in New Hampshire shows that these rural learners are outdoor recreating at rates that are much higher, significantly higher than their urban and suburban peers. So this is a space and a context for learning that they already care about. And as you can see, like they're already learning in this context, right? When you learn to fish, you learn to snowmobile, you learn to ski, you have a sense of like what it's like to learn something new, but in an environment that you already care about and have knowledge of. And then why outdoor recreation? There's an incredibly growing national interest in outdoor recreation. So, from an economic perspective, I think this statistic is huge. Outdoor recreation has a total output that's greater than mining, utilities, farming, manufacturing and chemical production. So like outdoor recreation has this huge economy that it's tied to, especially in our rural communities. And if you're not aware, there's this thing called the Confluence of States over here, which I've linked for you, which is 19 states across the country who have committed to a position at the state level that oversees outdoor recreation and fosters outdoor recreation. So, you know, at the local level, it's meaningful to rural youth. At the state level, there's a commitment. And then at the national level, there's this, it's a huge industry with a lot of funds that are being driven towards it and a lot of jobs that are being connected to it. I want to see if there's anything else I should highlight here. 80% of the categories that are identified through outdoor recreation are experiencing growth. So I think just the case I'm trying to make here is that outdoor recreation is this really growing industry that rural youth are already familiar with. And then down here, I've shared some projects with you. Carhartt has recently done an investment in rural communities through outdoor recreation. So just want to kind of point that out to everyone. And then specifically, we did our research in New Hampshire. And like many rural communities, New Hampshire has, you know, a loss of learners. So young people are leaving New Hampshire, they're finding jobs elsewhere, they're leaving that community. But what we've been able to identify, the team at UNH was able to identify that outdoor recreation does signify a pull factor. So among all age groups, outdoor recreation serves to pull people to the state, to keep them there. People identify wanting to ski, wanting to use the affordances of outdoor recreation in the state of New Hampshire. So it also contributes significantly to overall jobs and total workforce in New Hampshire. And then there's this ecosystem. So what we talked about was, well, okay, Amanda, outdoor recreation is cool. How do you connect that to STEM? What we've tried to really think about is outdoor recreation is this ecosystem, and rural and small town communities and those who live in them have to learn how to manage those resources. And that requires STEM skills, right? There's a lot of development. Rural communities are actually leading the edge. They're really leading the work around how to the tools and the methodologies for managing outdoor recreational resources, and then also engaging in outdoor. So developing like Camel Pack was developed by young folks in a rural community, right? This idea that the tools you need to do outdoor recreation and then the outdoor recreation opportunities themselves are within rural communities and being developed by rural communities. And then as Kim and Kathy said, my focus is on career and technical education. That's a lot of where my learning has been. I was a CTE teacher, and the state of New Hampshire actually approved CTE competencies. So I don't know if that's happening in your state, but a lot of states are starting to identify outdoor recreation as a pathway through career and technical education. And in New Hampshire, they did that. They identified these 4 competencies, these 4 competency areas, and then more competencies under there that created a state level support for outdoor recreation as a pathway. So I'm just curious, you know, what role does outdoor recreation or the outdoors play in your rural community? And I'm assuming that it's, you know, a significant role, but I'd love to hear from those of you on the call. You can answer in the chat, and I'll also take this moment to check the chat because I think there might be some questions or comments in there. So let me just see if there's anything that folks want to share. So let me just jump in and see. Oh, folks, thank you, Judy, for the video. Yeah, the video was great. I think what I want to say about the video is all of those little clips you saw of kids like doing activities, the app allowed the kids to record those videos and take those photos. So those were actually, that was actually data collected by the young people. So I think that's really a big deal. Okay, Crystal, so in your rural community, not a lot of engagement in outdoors. Okay, that's really interesting. I think that in some urban and suburban communities, what we're people taking youth to outdoor recreation environments, so traveling by bus or taking them to these communities. John is saying outdoor recreation is a huge part of our region. Okay, great. Yeah, please continue to add your thoughts. No buses, Crystal. Okay. We have conservation and stewardship in Redmond. They have a project engineering program. Design and build snowboards. That's so cool. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Cam, because that idea is exactly what we're talking about. The designing and building of snowboards is a STEM activity, right? You have to understand the way the materials work, the design of the edge of the snowboard, right? And numerous local OR employers. Great. Terrific. Okay. So I think I'm going to move on here, but please, I invite everyone to continue to add their thoughts in the chat. So what does STEM look like in rural communities? And Kim and Kathy alluded to this a bit. In our project, we're using the term STEM to refer to integrated STEM learning. So situations where the STEM is authentically understood and we can facilitate understanding of science, technology, engineering, or math within this like context of the outdoor recreation. Instead of favoring like a specific discipline, like saying math through the outdoors, we really wanted to focus on innovation and applying the processes of STEM to tools and technology creation, and then management of resources, right? So it's like you have to have STEM concepts, STEM understanding to do this, just like was mentioned in the chat, designing the snowboards, right? Okay. And you all probably know this, but 1/3 of US schools are rural. So our rural kids are, you know, they're out there, and we need to be making sure that we're reaching them, because although rural students are performing comparably to their academic peers, there are reasons why rural students are not going into STEM majors. Okay. And we found that in New Hampshire, rural youth were not selecting STEM majors and STEM career pathways at the same rates as their suburban and urban peers. And there's reasons for that, right? You know, maybe under-resourced classrooms or just geographical constraints or few mentors. But what we were thinking about is there's also reasons that are psychosocial barriers, which are this idea of stigma or self-doubt that can really undermine some of our rural learners' self-belief or self-efficacy. So what we decided was that to be effective, a STEM learning environment really had to anticipate these psychosocial barriers and address that. And what we wanted to do was position rural youth and say, you are already a STEM person. You are already a STEM person. You're already hunting. You're already like foraging for mushrooms or horseback riding in the woods, right? And you already have these skills. You just haven't named them STEM skills yet. You haven't identified them as STEM skills. We believe that if we can put STEM, and the research tells us that if we can put STEM in this narrative intervention, or in this way that is essentially like contextual for them within outdoor recreation, we could address those underlying psychosocial issues. And then there's this like idea of college for all, and I want to just touch on this really quickly, is that in rural communities, there can be this dichotomy, like if I go away to college, I reject my rural community and I'm leaving behind the folks that I love and the people that have supported me. And this does appear in the research over and over. So this message of college for all can actually sometimes create barriers for rural youth to engaging in STEM careers. But luckily, if we can position this through career and technical education, recent research has revealed that if we can say, look, this is maybe a trade school, or this is something that can lead you to a career, and then you can apply for college, right? College can be a pathway. It doesn't have to be going right away. We can really inspire and encourage rural youth to pursue STEM or pursue STEM careers that require STEM without creating this like stay or leave dichotomy. So I want to stop here and I'd love to actually hear from any folks. So far, what I've shared, do you disagree, agree with it? Do you have some general thoughts? Or are you feeling something or wondering something? And the next part of the presentation is really going to dive into what the project was and then some of the findings. So I just want to take a minute and let people even come on mic. Kim and Kathy set this up as instead of just a webinar, it's a meeting so that we can really hear your voices. And I'm going to do that thing where I wait the 30 seconds, because I'm practicing that. Okay, Judy, thanks. I see, Judy, that you've come on mic. So yes, please.
Hi, so my name's Judy Vigna, and I live in Plymouth, Massachusetts now, but I grew up in a very rural part of Massachusetts called Cheshire in Berkshires. And so there was no transportation, and also socioeconomically, like I didn't ski, but I did go sliding, and I did do ice fishing, and I did all of those rural things, and never would have thought of this as STEM. And so now I went back and they just created a whole new center. And I saw your video, just a little piece of that when you were marketing it for this. And all I could think of is, oh my goodness, if we could bring this to my old town, wow, would that make such a difference for those youth to see it, one. And also, I never thought about like the outdoor recreation as a career pathway. And it did resonate when you said to me, when you just said about rural youth, if you go to college, you're feeling like you're leaving your family behind. And that definitely was how I felt. And I did not want to go. And my mother was like, you must go. So I think that you really hit a lot of really great points. And I'm so excited to be able to share this video with many schools in the rural part of the state. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy. I really appreciate that. And John dropped a question in the chat, which was, do you consider hunting and fishing as STEM activities? And John, yes, we did. But even more than that, we actually, when I get into the project, we asked the youth to identify the STEM, the outdoor recreation, the STEM that was happening in the outdoor recreation activities they were doing. So they did identify hunting and fishing as STEM activities. Yes. And I agree with them. You know, I think there's a need. Ours was an exploratory project, right? With a good, I think a good solid basis and concept. And now there's a need to, how will we scale this? How will we like really push the STEM learning even deeper so that there's real learning that's happening around STEM? Yeah. But I want to give someone else a chance. Do anyone else want to jump on and follow Judy? Anything resonate, or do you agree, disagree, or do you wonder?
I could say something here, having come out of 22 years in the classroom in a public school while also running an outdoor program out of that school and striving, it felt like every year, to try to convince the folks in the science department that getting outside the building was a worthwhile effort. With really mixed results, I just want to acknowledge all of the challenges that exist in a public school setting. Now, we're talking to a national audience here, so it's going to be very different in different places. But in Massachusetts, for example, we just this past election cycle got rid of the state testing requirement that's been in place for something close to 20 years. That state testing requirement really killed off a lot of innovations for doing things because of the need to touch on certain kinds of material in the classroom. So I think that it's really challenging for teachers. That being said, it's a really worthwhile effort, and I think we want to continue to balance between the student-led and also providing opportunities that align with needs and with opening up doors to pathways.
Yeah, John, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, our project was, small, pilot, exploratory. The findings were incredibly promising, and I've shared some of the journal pieces that we've published after this, but I'll just let you know that one exciting thing was that we found that young rural boys were engaging in our project at higher rates than they are normally doing when they're in school, right? And engaging in STEM and responding. We had a 96% retention rate of the youth over the year that we asked them to participate, which is pretty huge. So promising findings, but yeah, our next phase needs to be now, how do we support schools to either implement or run these projects, or how do we support out of school informal settings such as like 4-H or Girl Scouts to do this work. So totally agree with you. There are absolutely things we didn't figure out. We haven't figured out yet, maybe I would say. Okay. Yeah, and community service. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, it could be a great outlet when you think about STEM and the outdoors. Could I do a project, centered on identifying trails that are accessible for people who are maybe in wheelchairs or people who have mobility or sight, barriers, right? So yeah, lots of, I think, growth area. But I think what's exciting about our project is rural young people said, yes, outdoor recreation has STEM in it. And so now we can leverage that, hopefully. I'll just let anyone else want to chime in. Otherwise, I'll move forward with sort of giving you the nitty gritty details of like the project and some of the outcomes. Okay, I'm going to keep going then. So here is our project, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. Kim and Kathy did mention that I come from CAST, or I work at CAST. CAST is the creators of Universal Design for Learning, which is a framework, a research-based framework for designing learning environments that are more accessible and increase success for all of our learners. So that's sort of the lens. I just want you to know that's the lens, the overarching lens that the project utilized to make sure that we weren't inadvertently or unintentionally leaving certain students out, and that we were actually broadening participation. So what's interesting is this project actually started as a community-driven idea. So in 2020, the field came to me and just said, Amanda, you know, we really want to have outdoor recreation pathways offered through CTE. And, you know, Erin, I think that's like maybe to your point, how can we bring outdoor recreation into the classroom through career and tech ed might be a good pathway. And so we worked with community partners and stakeholders across the state to identify what should those STEM what should those competencies be for outdoor recreation, and how can you set up a CTE outdoor recreation pathway. I have a whole manual on that has been used by Washington State and all sorts of folks. So I don't know if I linked it here, but if I didn't, I will, you have my email at the end, and I'd be happy to share that manual with you. It's got tons of good guidance. But in that investigation, we realized there's STEM all over outdoor recreation, right? It kind of like brought this to our attention. And that's why we decided to write this NSF grant, because we were seeing how much STEM was in outdoor recreation, but we felt that unfortunately these authentic STEM experiences, you know, were going unclaimed or unrecognized as STEM experiences. And that's what we really felt like, I wonder if we can do something, and we can kind of address that issue of why aren't rural youth, or could we create more pathways for rural youth to consider STEM careers? So we hoped that by connecting to their interests, they might take a broader view of like, what is STEM and what careers can I go into that might be STEM related? So we applied for this feasibility study. We completed it. We had 54 youth involved. And as I said, we had that 96% completion rate. One student did move out of district and one student became homeschooled. So, but otherwise everybody participated until the end of the project. We did this awesome kickoff, which I think you saw maybe from the video. You could see that that's kind of what we were doing there. Is we had all the youth come and we gave them this app, which is this mobile app. And the app had prompts embedded in it that would say things like, you know, while you're outside today, what do you notice? Take a picture and tell us where you see the STEM, or what tools do you use when you're doing outdoor recreation, and how are those tools connected to STEM, or what STEM is involved in those tools, things like that. And then we also had a wrap-up session. So the kickoff session, we like empowered youth. You're the co-researchers. You're going to gather this information for us. We had monthly meetings along the way. And then we had this wrap-up session where they really looked at the data themselves and told us like, yes, this aligns with what we think, or here's a reflection. So this is sort of what we did. I just wanted to let you know, we did pay the students for every challenge or prompt that they completed, because we wanted to honor them as co-researchers. I don't know about you, but if I'm doing research, I expect to get paid. So we felt that should be, you know, shared with the students as well, and offered to them. Oops, and I just wanted to point out, I'm going the wrong direction. That these are the communities that the youth were coming from in New Hampshire. So, you know, some pretty rural communities. And total, they completed 680 challenges or prompts. So some of them said like, can you interview someone who works in the STEM field? They took all the videos, they took all the poems, they even photos, they even wrote poems about, like one of the prompts was like, write a poem about the STEM you see, you know, so we really tried to give them a variety of ways to respond. So this is an interesting one. Matilda has given us permission to share this. I just wanted to make that clear. So we asked her to interview a researcher and then reflect on that. And this is something that came out of that interview. Before this project, I didn't want anything to do with STEM, but now I want my future to involve STEM. Would you say that this project has influenced your career choice? And she said, yes, I would. So by engaging youth as co-researchers, we really felt that they took on this role of, they were doing STEM, right? They were doing research with us. They were investigating, they were using technology. And this is a peer-reviewed journal that we published. You can check it out if you want to learn more about sort of that perspective. We told the youth that they would be paid for challenges by each month. So you can kind of see how many challenges we were willing to pay them per month. Some of them went above and beyond and completed more challenges. Some did just the basic number. Here's an example of a challenge. So a challenge would say something like, this video shows a moose shedding its antlers in the wild. You know, you can learn more about it here. Wildlife scientists are only able to catch this event using technology. In this case, it's a drone, but drones aren't the only kind of technology used. Remember, technology can be anything from a fishing pole to a camera, from a walking stick to a search and rescue dog. And we had a search and rescue team come into the opening session to sort of show the technology they use. And then we said, can you teach us about one kind of technology you use in the outdoors? And so these were some of the responses. So someone drew a fishing pole. You know, I use a fishing pole for fun. I use it to hook, catch a fish, reel it in, and then drew a picture of that and took a picture. This kid said that they use snowshoeing. Snowshoeing is the tool that they use, and snowshoes are made specifically for traversing snow. And this kid went out with his mom, had his mom take a picture of him out there using his snowshoes. And then this young kid said, skis are the technology that I use when I'm outdoor recreating. And I use different kinds of skis with the edge, depending on what I want to do with them. So these are just like examples of student. Here are some more student challenges that were completed. We were able to give we gave all the youth feedback. If you see this little bubble, that means that we gave those specific learners feedback, and we responded to each of the challenges with questions and kind of feedback, thanking them. And then we had these monthly sessions, which I told you about, where we asked them to respond to use some graphic organizers, and they were different each time. And you know, here's one. In what ways, if any, has participating in this project changed the way you think about science? I noticed there is a lot of STEM or science in everyday life. I never thought of it that way. For example, sledding is my favorite winter activity. I never took a second to think if it was using STEM in the outdoors. So these are just like real kids responding to these questions. And here's another one, same question. I have found that by truly paying attention to the world around me, I've seen a lot of science. It's in all the outdoor activities I do, even as simple as skiing or snowshoeing. And what would you tell people about this project? I thought this was really cool because the kids really connected to being part of a UNH study. UNH is their local hometown university, and they wanted to be part of it. And also this one, this kid says, I tell people about this project. I usually say it's a research project about STEM and the outdoors. Some people ask me questions, what do I do for the project? So that's just a little bit of, I think I had 2 of these. Yeah. So is there anything I want to show you now? Oh, this is another peer-reviewed journal, which is highlighting outdoor recreation as an equitable context, meaning that there was no difference in participation for boys or girls, for students with disabilities, for students low income. So it was a very equitable context for learning STEM, which school isn't always. And I'm not putting school down. I'm just pointing out that in some cases, you know, school isn't the most equitable for all of our learners. So you have a link to that here and a bit.ly. But I wanted to put on the screen a couple more quotes we gathered from students, and then see if any of those quotes or that data jumps out at you. Does that seem like, Kim, do I have time? Does that seem like a good activity for kind of getting us to think about? So here's some quotes. So I'm going to read them out loud just to make sure everybody can, you know, in case you are driving or something. And then I would love to hear. Oh. I can hear someone. I'm just letting you know. It's not a big deal. I'm just letting maybe I would just ask everyone to check their mics, make sure they're turned off. It's not a super big deal. Okay, so I'm gonna read these prompts and then I'd love to know in the chat, if any of them resonate for you or if you have any questions, and I'll take that moment to check the chat as well. When I look at this data, I feel amazed because of how organized the process is. Oh, we gave all of the youth all of their data, like what they responded to, and so this student is saying at the end of the final projects where we brought all the youth back together, we handed them packets, were printed out with it, which was all of their information they had gathered and photos and videos they had taken. So this student is responding to that. When I look at this data, I feel amazed because of how organized the process is. This makes me wonder how hard it is to look at the research and organize it, but it is amazing how when I think about how it's organized, this project is, and how it makes you think of science as being everywhere. When I look at my data, I feel proud of myself because I can feel my curiosity and my understanding through the reading. When I look at my data, I feel like the people who made this project did a good job designing and developing. This makes me wonder how long and how hard it is to do something like this. For the next project, I think there should be one or two more meetings throughout the year and some group activities. I learned that STEM is in the places I didn't know. STEM can be inside and outside. So any comments, questions, reflections on this, on these quotes? I will look at the chat now, or come on mic, please. How much did I pay per challenge? $25. We paid $25 in Amazon gift cards per challenge, and they had to come to the meetings to get that money. So those monthly meetings, we took attendance and then we would check and say, oh, you've completed this many challenges. We'll send you the gift card now. But if you're not at the meeting, you have to come to the next one. So it's kind of incentivized coming to the meetings too. Any other questions folks have or responses to some of the quotes or data that we've seen?
Amanda, did anybody come in and talk to these young people about careers in outdoor recreation?
Yeah, that's great. So thanks, Kathy. The prompts themselves had some of the prompts were career connected. So they would be like, watch this video on a scientist talking about how they're engaged in outdoor recreation through careers, or interview someone who has a career in outdoor recreation and ask them about how they use the STEM. So we tried to embed it in, but in the kickoff, we did have a search and rescue person who uses a dog and GPS and drones to do search and rescue. So she came in and the kids hid and she found a lost kid. And then she talked about all the technology and STEM she uses to do that search and rescue. That's sort of how we kicked it off. Anyone else feeling like they have questions? If not, I'll just say, these were the final few quotes. And the reason I want to share these from kids is because I'm I feel like youth are at the center. I like to position all of my research with youth at the center, and I want to find ways to impact youth voice, because I really think, and the research bears this out, that if you can have an authentic experience of doing STEM, then you will be able to see yourself as a STEM person. It's more than just learning about STEM, right? It's the act of being that co-researcher. So another youth said, when I look at this data from OR Folio, I feel accomplished because my responses have changed since the pre-survey. We even gave them their own pre and post survey data so that they could be like, look, I've changed, in my responses. As I think about STEM more, I'm more comfortable with it. This makes me wonder, if I continued with something like this, if I would grow to like STEM even more. When I look at the data, I feel enlightened because the challenges open my mind to the STEM and outdoors in ways I didn't think of. And then when I look at this data, I feel flashbacks of when I did the challenges. Just reading the challenges makes me realize how much STEM. So the real learning here is not even really the activity of gathering the STEM data, it's like the learning is actually reflecting on what I did as a co-researcher. Okay, I'll stop making that point. So anyway, here are some learning. If you really want to work with rural youth, this were some learning that came to us. Adult partners are critical. We think adults should be trained in UDL as well. You need to have very clear goals and expectations. You do need a strategy for reminding students. So, using the Remind app or having these monthly check-ins, and then engaging adult leaders and youth to create the plan from the beginning, which we tried to do. Feedback is critical. I'm going to sort of skip this section. I'm just going to in summary, if you want to leave this meeting with sort of what we learned, you do need to utilize youth interests and rural assets to spark the interest in STEM. A friend of mine, Sweeney Winchief here at Montana State, said, if you want STEM, if you want rural and Native and tribal youth to engage in STEM, you need to remove the crisis of relevance. So it has to be incredibly relevant for them. And I think that's what we're trying to say here. We really encourage you to position youth as co-researchers or co-workers. We encourage you to use UDL, and then there are benefits and constraints of school and schooling. So some of the benefits are, in rural communities, schools are like hubs where kids come together. But in some places in rural communities, school has not been a place of success for certain populations. And so they might resist or push against STEM if it's introduced in those environments, where they might be more open to it if it's introduced in these informal settings. If you wanted to design a project with rural youth using that was a STEM-based project, these are some questions I would encourage you to consider. Yeah. But we just have a lot, but I just think maybe Angie's saying, I love this first point. It's a perfect way to encourage positively about being rural and Native youth. Angie, do you want to maybe tell us what were you referencing to this deck here? This slide.
Again, we are having really efficient and a lot of rain even through this weekend over in Northern California. Heavy rain and snow likely as they're heading Friday into Saturday night over and into the climate.
I'm not sure. I don't think that's Angie. I think she's saying, yes, the broader impact slides. Okay, great. So Angie's reacting to this idea of really using, here, it's this one here. The idea of really positioning rural youths that really reference using their assets and their interests to spark that idea of STEM. Great. Okay. So, and then finally, I guess I'll just say, what are the broader impacts for this? We really do need to come up with ecosystems in rural communities that support community mentoring and build infrastructure so that there's cultural ways of knowing STEM, so that rural youth, it's not like STEM only happens in school and I'm isolated from it. It's like STEM is happening in my community, in my culture. I feel it, I can relate to it, and there's resources to support me. And we really want to just reiterate, and some of the broader impacts are that rural place-based pathways. So that's what we were talking about earlier with outdoor recreation being a pathway to a career, connecting to STEM that like begins in the rural community. And then we just want to say some of the other broader impacts are supporting that psychosocial identity. So, we want to reduce that stay or leave thing that we talked about and reinforce that there are good jobs, good STEM-based jobs in rural communities. So how can we do that? So I kind of went a little bit fast because I wanted to leave time for Q&A. I'll just tell you that there are in this slide deck some additional resources. So if you want to reach out to me, you have my email here. This is a ton of research, just resources and articles and whatever I could find that I felt like you all might be interested in. And let me go back. I'll stop sharing. Oh no, I'll stop sharing for one. Actually, I'll share one more slide. I'll bring our attention to it. I'll find the slide and then I'll share it. But is there any other questions? I'd love to take questions now. Margot, yeah, the age group. So we went 14 to 18. So middle school through high school. And what was interesting is the middle school students actually had some barriers we didn't anticipate, which was a lot of them, their parents were more restrictive of their cell phone use. So, this app was on the cell phone, and we did give kids tablets they could use. So like everyone had access to a device, but the rural parents were a little bit more restrictive of middle school students. So there was sort of like that barrier a little bit. And we did get more rich responses, STEM rich responses from the high school age kids. So, do you have the link to the slides? Yes, absolutely. Let me drop that in the chat.
Amanda, I'll get that.
Okay, great. Yes. So yes, I have the link to the slides. Rural areas have limited cell service. You know, that was interesting, Aaron. None of the kids gave us any feedback that the Wi-Fi was a limitation. Now, what's interesting is the app could be used on their cell phone or their tablet or their computer. So a lot of times I think they may have been taking photos on their phone or making videos and then uploading their responses when they got home, or potentially they were doing it at school or potentially at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. You know, I'm not sure, but they didn't respond to us or reply to us that was a barrier. We did ask them about other barriers, and but that one wasn't one that came up. Any other questions? I didn't mean to like go so fast, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody got everything. Yeah, yes.
If I may, I'm curious as to the role of the school teachers and how they were looped into this process.
Yeah, awesome. So we worked with some teachers, and we also worked with some community centers who had active like community leaders with youth programming. So some were teachers, but there was what we called like a caring adult in each of the communities, an adult that was sort of committed to the project and wanted it to be successful. And what happened was we put out a survey at first to rural youth across northern New Hampshire to just see like what are their perspectives of STEM, but also to identify youth that we could then reach out to ask to participate in the study, because we did need youth who showcase some interest in outdoor recreation, right? That was a sort of a caveat. And initially we wanted 100 survey responses and we got 250 and we had to shut the thing down. We had to, because we were also paying for those survey responses. So we had to like stop. So we had 250 youth that applied, and then we pulled youth from the communities that had a group of youth and a caring adult. So then we decided, okay, of these survey responses, if there's a sort of a chunk or a large number of them in a certain community with a caring adult, then we'll pull from that. Teachers and adults were invited to all of the check-in meetings, which were held for each community. So they became like a cohort. And teachers and adults were invited, community partners and adults were invited to the kickoff and closing session. And we also paid them to complete challenges. So, and those challenges were also STEM related, and we gathered their feedback that way. I know a lot of people had to go, I apologize. But are there any other questions or projects you're doing? I can tell you what we're doing next. So we applied to 2 more NSF programs. And this is interesting, Aaron, to your point. One is in school. So one is looking at taking this learning and this approach and creating a CTE pathway so that you could actually have this free curriculum that CTE centers could use. All the curriculum I ever create is free. I just want you to know all the resources are free. It's paid for by the National Science. Our taxes pay for it, so I think you should get it for free. So anyway, so so giving this free curriculum and best practices of how to engage rural youth in CTE, that's one pathway. And then right now we're writing another out of school informal grant to say, could 4-H use this? So writing a free curriculum for 4-H to use these strategies and develop UDL based guidance for 4-H, because I don't know if you know 4-H very well, but the volunteers often report that they don't have a lot of training or access to good STEM. They don't maybe have STEM knowledge or training around really working with a wide variety of youth. So hopefully we could use this to also create guidance around STEM development and working with youth. I feel like the stipend is a strong incentive. How could this be implemented without funding for incentives? Yes, exactly, Margot. So that's what we're trying to do now. we think that through CTE, right, which would have grades attached to it and work-based learning opportunities, that would be an incentive in school. And then through 4-H, which is a program that kids sign up for, and they can get, they have mentors, and there's other incentives built into like both of these two pathways. So yeah, now we're trying to sort of strip the incentive and see where we can embed the learning. Yeah, but maybe also there's like a work-based learning connection where maybe an employer would, like, if you think about the service learning aspect that Kim and Kathy were pointing out, if kids are going out into outdoor and they're like naming trails, or actually in New Hampshire and Vermont, they do have these things where kids can do some paid summer internships where they, clear trails and they name trails and they make them more accessible. So you could find funding that way and maybe link it to STEM and link it to these challenges. So I think there's options there too.
Hey, I think that one of the other things I would bring up is that Amanda and her team did a whole program that lasted quite a long period of time. But you can always start with one activity. Like, we want young people to go out and just do this for a day and come in and share what they learned or whatever. So it doesn't have to start with something big. It can build over time, and your capacity to do it can build over time.
Yeah, and I think I really love that. Thank you so much, Kathy. I also think, like, positioning, telling youth, like, we think STEM is connected to the outdoors. Do you? Can you prove it? Like, help us know. And then I think one key is also helping them publish or share this information. So one of the things we want to do if we apply for that 4-H grant is really make a way for youth to then share their learning with the world, like give them a bigger platform for their voice to be shared, like through local newspaper, hyper local newspaper, all in small towns, always looking for content, right? Or through making their own blog posts, so that they're like change makers, right, in their rural communities. And Margot asked, how did we measure STEM? And I'm going to just put the link to a peer-reviewed journal article that Jason and Andrew and I all wrote, where we really delved into the measurement of the STEM, Margot, just so you know. So it's like, it really calls out like how we evaluated the STEM and what we were looking for. So it's a bit.ly, so I'll just grab that and put it in the chat so everybody has it. The answer.
And Amanda, Judy has a question. Could your pilot program be run again if there was funding?
Yeah, 100%, of course. And it'd be less expensive now because we already have the challenges. And I would really want to like give it to like, ideally, if someone wanted us to train them, then they could run it and they could adjust it for their own context. That's what I think you should do. Yeah. Really cool strategy to develop STEM identity by paying youth to do STEM research and being paid as STEM professionals. Yeah. I mean, I think that I think that's like the secret sauce. If you were to ask me, like, why did this work? I think it's because we didn't just say, go find, like, here's the learning about STEM. We said, you are doing STEM. We can't even know the STEM you're doing. You're the only ones, rural youth, who can tell us where the STEM is happening. And we want to pay you and call you researchers and name you in our publication. And if I do this again, if I get funding, I'm actually going to get them IRB trained and name them in the publications. So I think just trying to take that to like that next level,
Amanda, I just wanted to chime in and say, for the folks on here that are working with out of school youth, opportunity youth, right? And how you could take these activities and what you've done is, as you pointed out, particularly for young people that school hasn't gone well, and that are pretty classroom adverse and seat time adverse, right? That this is just a gorgeous way to sort of bring them back into being passionate about learning and what they're interested in, but also a way for at least the youth build programs that are on that are doing construction. This is another way to tie in that STEM learning, right? And another way to sort of come at it and introduce it. And then the other thing I was going to say is that so many programs working with out of school youth have that community service piece that you and Kathy were talking about a little bit earlier. And when we think about that from a program design, it's usually focused on service and civic participation and we've talked with you all a ton about this, but how it also ties into pathways. All of that ties into pathways in STEM. So how often the service activities that may be trail maintenance or working with a park service or public lands or anything like that is another, it's another opportunity and window to take that service time and emphasize it in this way and connect it to STEM pathways.
Oh, I love this equine therapy project. So, oh, you should know, Cam, that Heart of Oregon. So I am a horse girl for life and also did equine therapy. So I think you could really connect that, cool way to STEM. And I just want to say, like, the tools that the kids are using. So like if they're using crampons for rock climbing, or they're using like certain kinds of saddles that are like treeless or whatever, so that the horse can move more easily. Like, think about who created that. Like, how was that created? How was it manufactured? You'll find that a lot of these tools and technologies are created by people in rural communities who are doing this outdoor recreation. So like the rural communities are on the edge of designing the tech that's used in outdoor recreation. So I just feel like playing that up, and how do you manufacture something if you have a really good idea for it? And then you break into like, entrepreneurship, which is great for rural folks, rural kids. And also like working remotely, you can do STEM remotely. I mean, I live in Polson. I think, thank goodness for Starlink, really. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like those are kind of all tied in here,
Amanda, I have to jump in and say we are at time. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and taking time. And Amanda, just such a fantastic way to end the 2024 series. You are amazing and brilliant as always, but this content was really exciting. I think both from that, visionary, gets us thinking, but also immediate and practical, and you put it in a local and a national context. So massive thanks for you and all the time you took to prepare this and bring it to our group. So
Hey, maybe we could have Amanda back to talk about her drone project she did with young people.
Yeah, that one's not finished yet, but it's a free drone curriculum for rural middle school teachers specifically. And the drone kits are only like $2,000. I don't make I'm not selling the drones. I just tell you what drone equipment to get, but the curriculum itself is totally free. Yeah. And Oregon's been using it a ton. Actually, I don't know if she's still here, but.
So yes, that's a yes, we will have you back. And to just wrap us up, to say a huge thank you again to Chloe Seaton for making all of this possible behind the scenes and working her magic. Huge thank you to my colleague, Kathy Moxon. It's great to see you all. And as we try to end most of our emails to everyone, massive thank you for all the love that you shower on all our rural young people and urban young people as well. So we wish you all the best as you close out this year and head into 2025. And again, we will get you the recording and the slides again, and we hope to see all your faces in 2025. As always, you can reach out to us anytime with suggestions, questions, ideas. Could you do this? And we love hearing from you. Like, we really love hearing from you. So Amanda, thank you.
Bye, you guys.
You all are
Thank
the best.
you.